Today I'm going to be reviewing The Big Bang Theory, Season 1, Episode 12, The Jerusalem Duality. The episode gets this title because in this episode, Sheldon decides to come up with a plan to try to build a replica of Jerusalem so that he can win a Nobel Peace Prize because he no longer thinks he'll win a Nobel Prize in physics. If only Sheldon knew at this time what the future had in store for him. So the episode starts out with Leonard and Sheldon having a conversation about teleportation in the Caltech cafeteria. I like these little conversations they have. In this one, Sheldon is concerned because he says if he's teleported, the original Sheldon would actually be destroyed and a new Sheldon would be created in its place, which Leonard says would still be a problem. Because as Sheldon said, it would be an exact copy with no virtual improvements. Interesting thing to note here is the setting of this episode. It starts out in the Caltech cafeteria, and I believe this is the first time they're in the Caltech cafeteria in the show, which becomes a common setting throughout the remainder of the series. It's not their first time at Caltech, but this episode does feature the longest amount of time spent there so far for one episode. Next, Dr. Gablehauser comes in, and this is his second appearance on the show, and he brings Dennis Kim, a young student that Caltech is trying to draw in to do research at their school to do his graduate work. He's only 15 years old, but already going to be starting his graduate studies. Right away, he gets off to a bad foot with Sheldon because he states that he thinks that the string theory research that Sheldon's responsible for is a dead end. Sheldon and Leonard are tasked with taking Dennis on a tour of the school, and they do. When they get to Sheldon's office, Dennis continues to critique Sheldon's work, much to his dismay, and he reveals that he has also won the Stevenson Award that Sheldon had won, and Sheldon said he was the youngest to have won it previously, and Dennis said you were the youngest, so indicating that he is the new youngest person to have won the award. So this develops into a problem for Sheldon. He, as we know, was a very genius child himself. He went to college at a very young age, and was able to graduate and begin his research at a very young age. And it seems that he's threatened by another student coming along who may be recognized as possibly being more prestigious than he was at that time. He's also disturbed by the corrections that Dennis is making in his work, and it throws him off. Back at the apartment, he's upset as they're having dinner, but we get a funny part here where Penny asks Raj, confirms that he still can't speak to her unless he's drunk. She says he's damaged, gives him a hug. Howard comes in and wants a hug too, saying that, hey, I'm damaged. But Penny says, Raj, why don't you give Howard a hug? Raj seems willing, but Howard doesn't want it. So back to Sheldon, he's very upset here. He thinks that he no longer has as much value as he did before, but he bounces back a little bit later. He comes out and tells Leonard, hey, I'll help you collaborate on your work since I'm not going to be able to advance with mine anymore. He tries to look at Leonard's experiment that he's designing, criticizes it, and basically ends up making Leonard mad, and Leonard tells him to go away. So the next day, Sheldon decides to go check on what Howard's doing in the engineering lab. We actually get a pretty funny scene here before Sheldon gets there where Howard is on the phone with his mother and he's complaining that there weren't any ding-dongs in his lunch, showing that Howard is still pretty childish and his mother makes his lunch for him every day. Nothing really wrong with that, except that a grown man shouldn't be calling his mother to complain that he didn't get a ding-dong in his lunch. So Sheldon comes in and looks at the experiment that Howard's working on and basically criticizes and insults that too and gets the same reaction. He gets told to go away. And he actually asks if Leonard told Howard to say that. And when he says no, he thought of it on his own, Sheldon starts to wonder why he's getting this reaction. He next tries Raj. We don't see this interaction, but we see at the end Raj telling him also to go away. At this point, Sheldon starts to wonder if it's him that's causing this reaction. And yes, Sheldon, it was you. We then see Leonard, Howard, and Raj back at the apartment, and Raj reveals what happened when Sheldon came to see him was that Sheldon watched him work for a few seconds and began designing a piece of software that could replace him. So at this point, the three of them decide they need to come up with a solution to get rid of Dennis Kim so that Sheldon can get back to normal, and they decide that the best option is to try to get a girl to distract Dennis so that he's no longer interested in doing physics at the school. Their first attempt at this plan is to try to ask Penny if she knows any 15-year-old girls, which was a very creepy thing to ask. And she just closes the door in their face. So next we get to our title moment. We have Dr. Gablehauser bringing Dennis Kim into Sheldon's office to let Sheldon know they're going to be having a reception for Dennis Kim. To welcome him, he's decided to start doing his research at Caltech. Here, Sheldon explains his plan that since he thinks he can no longer get his Nobel Prize in the area of physics, he now wants to pursue a Nobel Peace Prize by building a replica of Jerusalem in the Mexican desert that Jewish people can visit as they would make a trip to Jerusalem. At the reception, we see Sheldon talking to a professor who is Jewish, and he's going over his plan to build this, and the professor gives him the same reaction he's been getting all episode, which is just, go away, Sheldon. So in the cafeteria, the reception is filled with young women. We find out that Leonard, Raj, and Howard completed their plan, and their plan was to look through personnel files, find anyone who has a daughter between the ages of 14 and 16, and to invite them to a fake Bring Your Daughter to Work day. They then realize they have to find a way to get Dennis to talk to one of the girls, and they're sitting around trying to think about it because they realize they don't really know how to do that well either. But it all kind of sorts itself out. Dennis finds a girl to talk to, and when Dr. Gablehauser tries to introduce Dennis, he says no. Instead, he's going to the mall with a girl named Emma. Sheldon sees this as an opportunity and jumps in and says not to worry everyone. While Dennis may be naive and not sure what to do, Sheldon will be here continuing his research because he does not require any form of human intimacy to distract him. This leaves Leonard, Howard, and Raj happy that Sheldon's back to normal, but confused as to how Dennis managed to get a girl, and they say, hey, maybe they're too smart and intimidating to women that they're trying to flirt with. Who knows? Maybe it's true. And the episode ends at the park, where we get a glimpse of Dennis Kim hanging out with his new friends, does not seem concerned with his former educational life at all, and seems to be going down a completely different path now. Which the others seem to kind of feel bad about, but Sheldon basically says, screw him, he was too weak. So that is The Big Bang Theory, Season 1, Episode 12. This is a somewhat interesting episode. It's not really one of my favorites, but there are some interesting points here to look at. One, I think at the end of the episode, they kind of jump to a conclusion. As soon as Dennis says he's going to the mall with the girl, they take that to mean that he's done and leaving for good. I don't know, it just seems like this would be a progressive thing over time, not that he would just suddenly be gone. He had already accepted his position at the school, so you wouldn't think that just because he says this, he's instantly gone. But when they show him later in the park, that does appear to be the case. And Dennis is never seen or heard from in the show again after this. It also shows the extremes that the other three in the group, Leonard, Raj, and Howard, are willing to go to keep Sheldon from annoying them, and that they would choose to willingly derail someone else's life just to keep Sheldon from annoying them. But hey, sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. Overall, again, I say this is an okay episode, not one of my favorites. I give this episode a 6 out of 10 score. As always, thank you for listening. If you like the video, please leave a comment, please subscribe to the channel and share with others. And as always, keep an eye out for the next episode coming soon.